Each week, the Stanford Graduate Program in Journalism invites an industry professional to share their insights. And each week, we bring you the highlights.
And it was like a Sunday night, and it was around 9:30 at night, and I was so fried, and I was literally counting the 2.5 hours I had left on duty before I could just like turn it over to Mark Landler. And I was in my pink pajamas. So I'd just sort of checked out, and I was sitting on the couch watching a DVR of the royal wedding because I had missed it on Friday because I was in Cape Canaveral with Obama. And I'm watching a DVR of the royal wedding, and the phone rings, and it's my editor. Saying, did you see the White House just put out a call calling for the pool reporters to come back to the White House because Obama's going to make a statement at 10:30. And I was like, what? And so we immediately knew something. He doesn't just decide to make a statement at 10:30 at night on Sunday night. So something was going on. And so I started on the phones trying to figure out what, when I got a phone call from our photographer. The New York Times is now the only newspaper that still has a permanent photographer in the White House pool. And Doug Mills was our photographer. So when the pool got called back in, Doug had to go back into the White House. And he is the best. Having Doug there, having Doug in the permanent pool for us is like having a secret spy everywhere, because he's got a wealth of experience, and he's just really, really good. And Doug calls me on my cell phone, and he was at the White House on the grounds, and he had overheard from somebody there, and we're not going to say who, but everybody at that time was thinking it's probably Gaddafi, the Libya operation was going on. And Doug says, I'm hearing it's bin Laden. And I was like, what? And he was like, that's what I heard. And he got off the phone. And so the difference for us is that because of Doug, everybody else at the time trying to find out what was going on was calling their sources and saying, what happened? Did you, what's going on? Is it Gaddafi? Is it this? Is it that? Whereas I was calling them and saying, I'm hearing it's bin Laden. And that's like the biggest, something I'd like to leave you with is that the more you know, the more you will find out. Because if they think that you know something, they're more apt to talk to you. And because of Doug, I'm now calling these people and saying, acting as if I know exactly what's going on. I'm hearing you guys got bin Laden. And I'm making all of these phone calls and not getting anywhere. And then one source, fired off all these emails, and one source was Jay Carney at the White House, wrote back, I hear you got bin Laden. And he said, can't say HC, but you might want to mobilize your NatSec reporters, which is not a confirmation, but he's not waving me off of it. And that immediately then gives even more credence. So then I know that, okay, I know we're on the right track. It's probably bin Laden. And so I'm calling people now with even more assuredness in my tone, like I know this is it. And finally I get one of a really good source of mine who I don't use very, very often. He's not at the White House, but he is at another national security organization within the government. And he picked up the phone, and I said, I hear you caught bin Laden. And he said, killed, not caught. And he hung up. And I still remember he hung up, and I'm looking at my cell phone, and I realized I had it. And I was like, oh my God, I had it. But it's something like that is so big that you almost, for like 5 seconds, I didn't even know what to do. And I had written, as I was making calls, I had written 2 paragraphs on my laptop saying American forces captured Osama bin Laden, some background stuff about the biggest terrorist, 9/11, put in something, just trying to, because I knew once we got it, we'd have to get it up on the web really quickly. And so I changed caught to killed on my thing, and I put urgent post ASAP in the subject line. And I hit send, and I sent it to the web and to the managing editor and to the executive editor and the Washington bureau chief and to our national security reporters. And within 5 seconds, my phone is ringing, and it's my boss going, who's your source? And I told him who my source was, and there's this silence, and he's like, all right, we're going with it. And I was like, okay. I was just sort of like, oh my God. And it went up on the website. And our website within 10 seconds crashed. And it's like there was so much traffic, and then it got going again. And I still remember, okay, now you want to find out more information. Obama still hasn't come out and said anything. And I was like 10:30 or 10:35 or something. And there was this period where I'm sitting there feeling like I'm out on this huge gargantuan limb. And I kept thinking, if I have screwed this up, I'm fired. It's like, and talk about go big or go home. I'd be going home really big. And then other people, other organizations started writing, that they had gotten independent confirmation too. And it's like, there's this relief when other people are saying, CNN and, MSNBC and all, and they're independent reporting. And it's like, okay, so I'm not the only one. We'll all go down together. And when Obama finally came out with it, I've never been so relieved. And just so, like, to this day, if Doug Mills, our photographer, walked in here, I'd give him like the biggest hug, because he just completely rocked for us that night. And he did it for us. And then the next day, that Monday, we go into the office. And we're fried because we've been up all night, but it's not even remotely over. So you think that but you now have to reconstruct everything that happened. And Monday is an even harder day than the night before, because now it's Monday and there's so many questions and there's so much stuff that you have to find out. And the Times loves to do what they call reconstructs, or TikTok, which is the narrative about how this happened. And they assigned me, Mark, and Peter Baker to the narrative TikTok about how Osama bin Laden was killed. And what they wanted was for Mark to, because he did the CIA, he covered the CIA, they wanted Mark to find all the, how the CIA did it, just the long search for bin Laden and all of that. And I'm the White House reporter, so my job is to find out about, the White House stuff and how Obama came to the decision. And you can just see that division of labor. Okay, so who gets the Jason Bourne stuff and who gets the boring meetings? And so I was like, but of course I had to do that because I cover the White House and Mark is Mr. Jason Bourne. And I go to the White House and I'm schlepping there and I'm tired and I'm like pissy. And I was like, I've got to, and I know those guys because I cover them. And I know how self-congratulatory they can be while they're not giving you any information. And it would be all this usual stuff about the president was very resolute. And he said, we've got to get this, Osama bin Laden, and he never veered for. And I knew the kind of stuff they'd be spieling out, and that wasn't going to work for this story. So I have a really good source at the White House who works for the National Security Council, and they're in the basement, and he's another source who I use very sparingly, but I love him as a source because he wants to be a writer, and so he thinks very cinematically. He's really great at anecdotes, and he's really great at scenes and painting scenes, and that's what a TikTok needs. A really good narrative story is going to have the scenes that put you there. And so I sat while they were doing the big press conference with John Brennan and all of that upstairs in the briefing room, where they were spinning the president was really resolute stuff. I went down. I did not go to the press conference. I went downstairs and I sat outside this guy's office for 2 hours waiting because I knew who I needed to talk to. And finally he lets me in and I sat with him, and it was the best press conference I'd ever blown off because he was great and he was able to take me through minute by minute, even though my part of the story was not going to be the cool SEALs coming down, parachuting from the helicopter stuff. He gave me all of this stuff about the first scenes around that table in the Situation Room, and the fact that Biden was fingering his rosary beads and Panetta is on the screen dictating what's going on, and the tension in the room, and just how scared they had ordered food from Costco, and turkey wraps and shrimp, and Diet Cokes and all this stuff is on the table, and he's painting this picture that's just amazing of these people. You can see how tense it must have been in that room. This was what I needed to hold up my end of this story. And I remember going back to the office, and it wasn't anywhere gonna be as good as Mark's stuff with the finding the courier in the pickup truck 3 years ago in Abbottabad and CIA following him, but it was able to show just what sort of our leaders, the people we elect, are sitting around the table and have found this terrorist they've been looking for 10 years and what was going on in that room. And we were able to put the TikTok together that way. And it was just, it's probably one of the stories that on this beat, I'm probably most proud of. It took three of us to do it, and we did it in a day, but it held up, and I go back and I look at it, and I'm really happy because there's a lot of detail that got in there that we wouldn't have gotten if we had just sat, with everybody else and just gone to the press conferences. Is because we're looking for more of a scene and a little bit more. And I just think as reporters, when we're thinking about what we're writing, it's really easy to get spoon-fed stuff, but it's so important to just look for, even if it's some small little detail, one little thing can say so much more about something than just the standard line. So that's, I guess, what I would like to leave you guys with.